Alright y'all, today we're going to talk a little bit about ground goat, which is one of the 10 species we raise here at White Oak Pastures. A lot of people have never had any goat, or really, you tell them goat and they're like, huh? Goat is really similar in flavor to lamb, but it's a little more mild. Goat is actually one of the most consumed meats in the world. It's actually one of the more healthier meats for you. It's leaner. The fat's better for you. It's got a better ratio of omega-3, 6. So overall, goat is actually a really great meat. Now, a lot of people really don't know what to do with goat. Typically, the majority of people, like I said, it's the world's #1 most consumed meat, but a lot of that's consumed over in Eastern Asia, the Middle East, and stuff like that. So one of the things we're going to do today is we're going to make some ground goat meatballs. So especially if you've got some people you want to introduce something new to, a great way to do that is always with something that's a little more familiar. A lot of people are familiar with meatballs, so I think this is a great way to kind of introduce people to goat. And also, if you want to mild it, make it a little more mild, something that people are a little more used to, you can also blend goat and say beef or something like that and tone it down a little bit. But I think it's great just the way it is. So what we've got today is we've got some parsley, some green onions, some rosemary. We're going to add a little Dijon mustard. I usually put in an egg per pound. We've got a little bit of our homemade breadcrumbs. This is just a little salt and pepper blend. And then we're going to put in a little bit of lemon as well, which will help bring some of that flavor out. So for some of y'all that maybe never opened a ground beef pack before or something, what I found usually the easiest way is I get a good sharp knife. You always want a sharp knife whenever you're cooking. It always helps anytime you're doing any job to make sure you got the right tools, and a sharp knife is the right tool in the kitchen. More people actually get cut with dull knives than sharp knives. So all I'm doing, I'm poking the knife through the bag, and I'm just going to cut through that plastic just like that. It'll open up, and then I can kind of just get that meat to fall right out of the pack without making a big old mess. Just like that. And I wear the gloves, so I don't have to go back and forth washing my hands, but anytime you handle raw meat, you want to make sure you wash your hands so you're not cross-contaminating. So we've got 1 pound of ground beef. We're going to add just a little bit of chopped parsley here. And we'll get some of these green onions in there as well. And a lot of the times, I've been cooking for quite a while and I do it professionally, so I don't always have a measuring cup handy. But I think one of the things that I really like about cooking is, while it is a science and there's a lot of, how-tos and why everything works the way that it does, but cooking is also an art. So, if you get a recipe and you're like, man, I really like this and this, but I'm not so sure about this, feel free to leave it out. If it's baking, that's, you got to be a little more precise with that. But with just cooking, you kind of wing it a little bit. And the more you do it, the more you'll see, hey, this looks right, or maybe I need to add a little more of this or a little bit of that next time. But usually, you kind of get an eyeball once you start making a couple of recipes. So that parsley and green onion, I want to chop it up fairly good so we can get a good blend of herb all throughout our meatballs. It doesn't have to be like sand, but you can see it's got a nice little crumble to it. Most everything's chopped up fairly fine. We're just going to throw that right in there. I love fresh herbs, and everything that I make, it adds a nice vibrant color, a lot of flavor, plus they're actually pretty good for you too. So you see we got a good bit of greens in there. Our house seasoning, which is just a salt and pepper blend. Just going to add a little bit to help bring out the flavor of everything. Like I said, we've got Dijon mustard, so we're going to put a good tablespoon or so in there. We're going to add just a little bit of breadcrumbs. If you wanted to go gluten-free with these, feel free to leave the breadcrumbs out. I typically add them because we're going to add a little moisture with this egg. and those breadcrumbs will help bind with the egg and will help keep a little more moisture in our meatball, so that way it doesn't dry out so much. Like I said, just a little squeeze of lemon. Now lemon will bring some of that flavor of the herbs out a little bit more, and it also acts kind of as a flavor enhancer similar to the salt and pepper. So now that we've got everything in there, all I'm going to do is put on some gloves, and then we're just going to mix it up by hand. This is great, especially if you've got little kids around. Kids love always playing with the food. You know, usually you got to sit down at the dinner table and tell little Johnny, hey, stop playing with your food, just eat it, okay? So this will help get the youngins in the kitchen, get them active, kind of get them interested in what exactly you're making. You probably don't want to tell them it's goat right off the bat, because then little Johnny's not going to want to eat it. But anytime you can get the young ones in the kitchen and participating, it's always a great way to kind of help get them more interested in the food that they're eating. So now you see we've got everything mixed up pretty well. So it's a little tacky, but it's not like runny, so that's really the consistency we want, so we can keep some of that moisture in there when we cook. And I'm going to take this tray that we had our ingredients on, take that little bit of added breadcrumbs and put it in there. If you've got pan spray at home, you can use that on the pan. I'm just going to put a little bit of olive oil on our pan here, and I'm just going to kind of smear it around, so that acts as my butter and my grease on the pan, which will keep our meatballs from sticking. So I just kind of spread that around. So typically we do our meatballs right around 2 ounces. You can make them as big or as small as you want to. So we're just going to make them into little rounds here. And we'll get them layered on this sheet tray, and then we'll pop them in the oven. As far as baking meatballs go, I usually like to do mine depending on the size. This size, we're going to put them in the oven at 425 degrees, and they'll take probably right about 7 minutes or so. You could also, if you wanted to, you could put them in there at 375. They'll just take a little bit longer. If they were larger, you definitely want to decrease the temperature some. But since these are so small, they're going to cook through quickly, but I still want to get some of that good brown and caramelization on the outside, which is why I'm going to turn my oven up to 425 degrees. So that way we'll get that nice caramelization on the outside. They'll brown up nicely, but still be juicy on the inside. So remember, when you've got something smaller, like a smaller cut of meat, like maybe a pounded out chicken breast or a thin steak, you know, these smaller meatballs, that's something you're going to want to cook at a higher temperature for a shorter time, so that you can kind of lock in the flavor. As opposed to those large cuts, large roasts, you might want to start at a high temp, but then you're going to turn it down low. So when we do our roast beef, we'll start at 475 for about 20-30 minutes to get that color on it, and then we'll turn it down because it's going to take longer for the center to get done. So like I said, we got 425 on our oven. We're going to pop them in there for about 7 minutes, pull them out, and we'll see what they look like. All right, y'all. See, we've got a nice little bit of color up on the top. They're still a little soft, so we know they got some flavor in them. Let's see, we pick these up here. See, we've done all the way through. Nice and hot, and not quite like Grandma used to make, but a little bit better with the goat.